When it comes to the best horror games, it can be hard to choose between them. As horror fans, we love a good scare, but the experience can be made or broken by how well the setting, story, and gameplay are balanced. Some of the best survival horror games will make you worry about how much ammo you have and how healthy you are. Other games, like Amnesia Rebirth, will make you completely helpless against the scary monsters that lurk in the dark. There are still a lot of scary games coming out, but here are some you can play now that will keep you scared until the Silent Hill 2 remake comes out. First, Outlast lets you go on a first-person journey through an old asylum that seems abandoned but is also very active. This is a place that no one in real life would ever go to on their own. At night, up in the hills, a long way from help, who would do that? The next setup alone is perfect for a scary movie, but this movie plays out like found footage the game, by making clever use of the night vision mode on a video camera to see in the dark. The grainy, green, glowing picture it makes is also a little too close to reality. It's part exploration and part hiding behind a table and looking through a viewfinder at dark, wheezing shapes in the distance. Even though it was already scary, the perfect pixelated whirling focus pulls only added to the mood. It's also fun to play with friends because at some point you'll both be screaming. Next, the Silent Hill series has some of the scariest enemies and situations in the history of video games, but Silent Hill 2 is the scariest game in the series. The PS2 classic makes our worst fears come to life, to show that there is no greater evil than what we make up in our minds. Even though he will meet monsters like the nurses and Pyramid Head, James Sunderland is much more worried about his own demons. All of them come out in the empty town of Silent Hill. James has gone back to Silent Hill to answer a letter that seems to be from his dead wife, but all he finds there are reminders of his own pain and guilt over her death. There's something scary in every corner of the town, but James has to get over his fears if he wants to find out what's going on. Both you and he won't like what's beyond them. Silent Hill 2 isn't just a scary game you should play, it also has a story you should listen to try to figure out and stare horribly at. As you go further, things get worse. Third, The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners. The only reason this isn't our best horror game ever is because it's VR, which makes it hard for many people to play. But if you can get a VR headset, this is one of the most important horror games you can play. It's one of the best playable adaptations of the source material ever made. You can swing axes or stick screwdrivers into zombies' heads, and you can carefully explore rotting houses while being scared of every corner. This is a perfect zombie horror fantasy. There is also a semi-open world where you can explore and go back to hubs, going back and forth between places to find useful items, enemies, and allies to help. It also has nothing to do with the comics or TV show, other than having zombies in it, so you don't have to be a fan to enjoy it. Next up is Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's hard to believe that Resident Evil 2, which came out for the PS1 over 20 years ago, is back on a list of the best horror games. But then there is the Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is a remake of the original game from the ground up. It honors the past while building a future for the franchise with a game that is almost 20 years old. It's a success and high on this list because it combines old and new in such a good way. It's a perfect retelling of Leon and Claire's first attempts to escape a zombie-filled Raccoon City with all the monsters, set pieces, and story beats you remember. But it is also made with modern horror in mind, with a level of gore that is almost beautiful, tight gunplay, clever puzzles, and some beautiful levels. This is just as important as the first game was back then. We can't leave out Alien Isolation. A lot of games have been influenced by the Alien series, whether it's James Cameron's Space Marines, Ellen Ripley's Strength, or the way silence in a soundtrack can be scary. Even so, Alien Isolation may be the most successful game in the series. It turns the gut-wrenching fear of the single xenomorph in the first movie created into a long game. Isolation's survival gameplay is tense and keeps your heart racing for hours and hours. You can play Amanda, Ripley's daughter, who is looking for her mother on a broken-down space station. She finds the same monster her mother fought. You always have to watch out for your alien hunters movie-like AI. This means you have to hold your breath as you barely avoid getting caught, or scream in terror if you don't make it to safety. Even though the game has a great atmosphere, it deserves more credit for making the xenomorph a movie monster that has been used so much that it is almost a cliche scary again. As we approach the end, we have Layers of Fear. Most games can make you jump or scream, but not many can make you question who you are in real life. At first, Layers of Fear seems very familiar as you look around a scary, creepy, and hugely empty house as you play an unarmed artist going home. The gothic story slowly comes together. Soon, though, it is clear that the painter has gone crazy, which is shown by his unreliable descriptions of the real world. Just around you, doors vanish and hallways change shape. The game changes in such a way to make you feel like the main character who has gone crazy that you'll start to question everything after a few hours. When you last looked, was that desk on that side of the room? Are you sure? Add to that the fact that the main character's illness is an obsession with making a painting from not the best materials. And you have one of the best horror games ever made. Finally, Resident Evil 7. It could have been a disaster. A clunky, forced update to a well-known series that made fans want Resident Evil 6's bombastic nonsense. But Resident Evil 7 is a success. It takes ideas from the best horror movies of the last 20 years and uses them to make a modern version of the series that fans will recognize. The main story is amazing, the secrets are cleverly hidden, and your enemies, the Bakers, are brilliantly sneaky. Switching the action to first person adds some VR options, but it also makes the horror feel too close for comfort. It's hard, interesting stuff in a place you'll remember long after you've explored it up close. But maybe the best trick is how resi everything feels. The safe rooms still feel like unsettling breaks, ammo is hard to come by, and the boss fights have the right amount of fear and glowing, oozing parts to shoot. It's a tight, smart horror game that's much better than most fans thought it would be. It's not the scariest or most subtle game on this list, but it's a brilliant and chilling rebirth. Which game have you had experience playing? Comment below. Till next time, cheers.